If you look at my index finger now, this is automatic. It's almost weird because it just goes by itself. So it's a very effective way of practicing. Hey, John here. So one of the things that I like to focus on when I practice is what I call finger choreography. And that just means that when I play something, let's take a minor pentatonic scale, for example. Let's do that in B minor, here from the 7th fret. I generally do this type of practice without a metronome because I want to focus on the technique and the way that it sounds and the way that it feels. So if I need to speed up or slow down during my practice, I want to be able to do that. So this is a sort of a separate mode of practice, but I really enjoy it though, because sitting with a metronome can be quite annoying after a while. Even though it's crucial, I think, to develop your timing and all that stuff, this way of practicing is a bit more like a meditation. So I can focus more on my technique and relax and not have to worry about being at a certain place at a certain time, i.e. playing in time. So again, we have this B minor pentatonic, and so what I mean then by finger choreography is basically I want to make sure that I'm prepared for the next note as I play the note before. So if I play the first two notes here, I already have my pinky in line on the string because, you know, I don't do this. So generally this pertains more to string crossings. So if I then play the second note on the string, instead of staying with my index finger where I'm at, I make sure that it goes up to the next string. So if you can see that, so if you focus on my index finger here, so I play the first note, and as soon as I play this note, I don't wait. I try to do this as the same note, basically, or the same. If you see it as like a sequencer, and you have like the piano roll, this would happen at the same time. So I wouldn't be, and then move. I try to get it, you know, in place as quickly as possible, almost like I would be playing these two notes at the same time. But we don't want to do that, obviously. So what I do then, I prepare, and I do that by actually resting on top of the string that I'm going to play next. I don't fret it, just basically just barely touching it. And then I keep going. And obviously, sometimes I'm not going to be exactly on point here, and that's fine. That's what I'm shooting for though. And why I think it's important to do this without a tempo, at least initially, is that you want to make sure you don't build up tension. So the only finger that should have any type of tension, and it should still be a very low amount of tension, is whatever note you're fretting. So I had a classical teacher once that told me a really good analogy, and that's basically, or not even an analogy, but what to think about. It's like you have a ball of energy wherever you're fretting, and that ball of energy should then move on to the next note. So whatever note or finger you were on, that should be empty of energy, if that makes sense. For me, it really helped though to be able to visualize where I put in the energy when I play something. So this is easier as well in a practical sense when you go from low to high or left to right on the instrument. Because when I go back here, now I want to do the same thing with the pinky, and you know, the pinky and the third finger. The problem with this one is that when you rest it, when I play this note and I rest here, it can be that I mute the note accidentally. But I don't really mind that much, because again, it's about working on the efficiency of the left hand here. So. As you heard, I muted a note, but I don't really care that much. I try to avoid it, but if it happens, it happens. And just makes everything so much smoother when you do this. And you can use this for pretty much anything that you're practicing. So it doesn't have to be a scale or 2 notes per string or whatever. If you do it on 3 notes per string, for example, basically first 3 notes, I don't need to prepare anything because, again, I shouldn't be like this. The finger should be in line anyway. But as soon as I hit the pinky, my index finger goes up. And if it's not on the same fret, we skip a bit, something like that. What I do then, I don't try to do this, because that's a bit too much. Instead, I just make sure my index finger is here so I can easily move it up to the next position when it's time to do that. So that's when you do scales, but this is also really effective for arpeggios. And I would almost argue that it's even more important here. So take, for example, this thing. It's an A minor second inversion arpeggio. So we have 12, 8 on the high E string, 10 on the B string, 9 on the G string. And the way that I would pick that would be up, pull off, up, down, down, down. But that's the right hand, right? But for the left hand then, why this is so important is because when I go from here, if I stay with my finger here, or not even fretting a note, because then we get this, we don't want that obviously. But even here, I have so little time to get to this note. So I have to move really quickly. So if you use the finger choreography way of practicing instead, you will find that it will be way smoother when you try to speed it up. So basically, these two are already prepared as they are. Now, if I want to be really, diligent about this, I should get this note fretted, or rested on the string, rather. So, but now, as soon as I hit this note, this finger goes down to the G string here on the 9th fret. And the same thing when I go back. And the key to getting this to work is a very slow tempo, because you're trying to teach your brain to do something new, right? And you can't just do that at a quicker pace initially, because you can't control what you're doing at that pace. So all the control you're building is going to come from doing the slow work, and then you can try speeding it up by using speed burst or whatever other method you like. But the slow practice is super important. And if you look at my index finger now, this is automatic. It's almost weird because it just goes by itself. So it's a very effective way of practicing. Initially, when I first stumbled on this way of doing it, I tried to prepare things even longer before, but I just realized that sort of defeats the purpose a bit, because you tend to get your hand in a knot when you do this. So basically, if I would extend this arpeggio, so I added 10th fret on the D string, 12th fret on the A string, and 9th fret on the A string. That's where I initially started doing this. So I tried to be like, all right, so if I play the index finger, when do I need that the next time? Oh, it's going to be up here. So I would try to prepare it already here. And in this case, it kind of works, but I would highly suggest that you try to stick to being one note ahead instead. It's way easier, and also it's going to be more practical in the long run, I think. So I wouldn't bother with trying to prepare things too far in advance. So when I go from here, make sure that the second finger is here. Now, my index finger kind of automatically has followed longer, and that's fine, but I'm not trying actively to rest on this string. So And it's quite a lot to think about initially here. So you need to do this very slowly at first. And like I said, that's why I don't think it's a good idea to use the metronome. At least not for the first few times you do it on whatever phrase. So you want to be able to really focus on where your fingers are going. So it's not even necessarily about playing things evenly, because what we're trying to achieve here is to teach our brain to teach our fingers to move in the correct fashion. So if I need to go and then wait here so I don't mute anything, then I do that and learn to relax here. And it really helps with the overall accuracy of your playing and also how it feels to play it. So if you had trouble with sweep picking, for example, before, and you felt like your left hand couldn't really keep up, this will absolutely help you if you take the time to work on it. Now, you can apply this to any scale, an arpeggio, and whatever thing you're working on, a lick. It basically works on anything. All right, so what about legato? Well, it's the same thing, because it doesn't really matter on a single string, because like I said, unless your hand, your fingers are flopping around all over the place, they should be in line anyway. So you're kind of prepared on a single string. But as soon as you change strings, you would have the same issues with legato if you're not preparing. So, all right, so let's try applying this with legato then. So let's just do this fingering. So 1, 2, 4 from the 7th fret, and we just do it on each string, just for simplicity's sake. So ascending, fairly straightforward. So as soon as my pinky hits, my index finger moves up. Right, and then when we go down, we do the pull-offs. It will be a bit trickier because the pinky have a tendency to mute the string that you're on, but it doesn't really matter, because again, what we're trying to accomplish here is to make sure that our fingers are not flying around the fretboard, and then we keep a relaxed left hand, and then we prepare the next note. So you got 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So actually a good idea just to do that. 1, 2, 3. And stop here and try to relax. And then keep adding notes after that. So it's really helpful for legato as well, and pretty much anything. You can also do something similar with the right hand, and I think this is pretty much where I got the idea, because this comes from classical guitar and something you would do when you practice arpeggios, but I would use this for just alternate picking as well as hybrid picking, of course. But basically what it means is that you prepare the right hand, the next note for the right hand instead. So if we just would do this on, let's say, open D string, and then 3 notes on the G string, we'll go like this. So basically, I do that, and as you can hear, when you have distortion on, it can sound kind of nasty because you're getting these sounds. So I would do this with a clean sound, or at least roll down the volume a little bit. See if that sounds better. But again, it's not really going to sound this way when you play normally, of course, because this is just about teaching your right hand the most efficient path for your technique. So again, the crossing of the string here is also very important. So I just go play the downstroke, and as soon as I've crossed the string, or as soon as I've gone over the D string, I immediately place the upstroke here, and that's what mutes the string now. Right, so, and then I do the upstroke, and then I'm back where I started. And then I have another downstroke, but the next downstroke, I'm gonna go to the G string. And I think here's the the best part of this exercise, because you kind of have to do this very quickly and efficiently, and if you have the wrong string crossing technique, you're going to find out pretty quickly. So it's a good way to practice quickly with the right hand, even though you're at a very controlled tempo. So basically, if I go back here, so I'm going to do down, up, down on the D string, up, down, up on the G string. So let's add some notes in the left hand. And then apply the same planting technique here. So this technique helps a lot when it comes to finding a good string crossing technique for however you do your alternate picking, because it's not really reliant upon doing it in a specific way. It's more finding your most comfortable way. At least that's been my experience when I've done this myself and also been teaching other students. And I don't have a single student that has the exact same picking mechanics. So, and if you look around, Instagram or whatever, even if people look kind of similar, you're gonna see, some deviations or variations. So I wouldn't worry too much how your picking hand looks, unless it feels really bad, or I probably wouldn't recommend, locking up the wrist and just doing full arm picking, because it's a bit too, you don't need that much force, and it's gonna be really hard to control your tone. But other than that, if you can find a relaxed picking technique, whether you use some arm, whether you use, some finger movements, or whatever, then stick to that. It doesn't really matter. I'm just bringing this up because there's a lot of students, private students that I have that come to me, and also people just messaging me and asking about their picking technique, and, should I, is it upward pick slanting, downward pick slanting, is this the correct angle of my pick or whatever? And I never learned that way, and neither did anyone that Troy Grady and the Cracking the Code team analyzed. And it's not about them being wrong, but it's just about, you don't need to go about it that way, because I think it can lead to some serious overanalyzing, which leads to, basically you're scared of practicing because you're so afraid that you're doing it the wrong way. And there's a lot of different ways of picking that works just fine. Maybe we'll find the optimal way of doing it eventually, but for, the vast majority of music out there's a lot of different ways that you can do it. So if you find a way that works for you, then stick to that. And even if you find something, it works for you most of the time, but then for certain things it doesn't work that well, change it up a little bit for that, and overcome that obstacle. Because it's also not about, everything looking totally uniform when you play. So when I do 3-note per string, I use slightly different technique than I would do with 2-note per string, but it's not anything I've been worried about. Right? It's not something that I really care that much about it, because I care about what it feels like and what it sounds like. And actually in the opposite order. What it sounds like is the most important, and then what it feels like. What it looks like, I don't really give a shit. So if you have trouble with this and you feel that you're overanalyzing things, just keep that in mind, that take all the advice from Cracking the Code and Troy Grady. I think Troy's an amazing player and a genius, but don't think that that's the only way to improve your technique. And even if you work, exactly the way that, you use exactly the same technique that they're talking about, you still need a shit ton of practice. So that's a non-negotiable. You still need to do that. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. Instead, just sit down and practice well, meaning focus on good tone. Everything is accurate. And then the speed will come later. And yes, you can use speed bursts and all kind of stuff to help with that. But if you don't build a proper foundation for your technique, no amount of speed bursts is going to help you. So I think there's too much of an emphasis on speeding things up, and not enough emphasis on keeping things accurate and relaxed. Because it's like tying your shoelaces. You started doing that when you were a kid, and then you were really slow and you had to think about everything, but then eventually, months, maybe even a year later, you had to run to the bus or whatever, and then you had to tie your shoelaces really quickly, and you could do that much faster than you started. But you didn't do that by doing shoelace speed bursts or, you know, sitting with a metronome and pressing up the tempo or whatever, if you weren't a really weird kid. But I think hopefully you get what I mean. If you repeat something enough, your body will just naturally be able to play it faster. And also, the way that I developed my technique, I mostly did just slow practice because I was so scared of developing any kind of flams in my alternate picking. So I was sitting there doing really slow work and then realizing that, you know, okay, I've done my practice now, and then I would just sit down and play for fun, and then I would play certain licks and try to get them a bit faster, because I was like, well, maybe since I spent, you know, 2-3 hours on the exercises, I shouldn't be able to screw my technique up just by playing something wrong a few times. And of course, that's the case. So that's the way I got my speed burst practice in a way, because I would just try to play these licks, you know, whatever it might be that I couldn't play at the time. And I realized that the more of the foundational practice I did, the faster the other licks became, even though I didn't really practice them, you know, with a metronome and putting the tempo up incrementally and all that stuff. It just got faster and faster week by week without me even trying, because my overall technique started to get much, much better. So again, I'm not preaching to you what you should do or that this is the way to do it, but if you've had issues with the whatever way you've done it before, try to focus more on the foundational stuff and see if that doesn't help you, because I really think it can. On the other hand, if you have no issues and you can, you know, use some other method of building speed, use that, because then you don't need any more advice in that department. So it's all good either way. But if you have any questions about anything, whether it's about this lesson or anything else, please post them below. Any comment actually helps the channel, so that's always appreciated. And if I were you, I would check this video out.